Okay, so I've been out exploring today. It's pretty warm, and I just started a new hobby of foraging for mushrooms. However, today was not a great day for it because it's so dry. It's been dry, so need to get some rain. But I wanted to tell you guys about a little adventure I had with the powers that be as far as enforcing our laws. In South Carolina, where I live, you can legally forage for mushrooms. You can't go forage for anything, but you can pick mushrooms on the national forest land. Okay, um, there are two giant national forests in South Carolina. You have the Sumter National Forest, which has like three different blocks in different areas of the state, and then you have the Francis Marion National Forest, which is down near the coast. The problem that I had is um, the places that I hunt in the national forest are um, they have wildlife management area signs on them. They have the diamond signs that say WMA on them. So there was some interpretation issues with what was legal. Now, the Forest Service, as I said, in this state, they allow you to go out and collect mushrooms for personal use. Right now, they don't really have a limit on it per se. It's just you can't sell them. If you get caught selling them, then you'll be in hot water. It's got to be just for your personal use. They told me at one time they said a 5 gallon bucket, but now they don't even say anything. They don't offer a permit for anyone for commercial use or anything like that. This is just strictly you go out and you forage for mushrooms for your personal consumption. Okay. Now, the state, obviously, the national forest is federal, but the state owns some properties, okay, that they manage for the resources, hunting, fishing, whatever. And there's a paragraph in the regulations that says state owned wildlife management areas, on those properties, you can't remove anything. An artifact, an arrowhead, a plant, anything. Okay. So the DNR, the state, the people that I usually run into when I'm in the field, the people that are checking my license when I'm hunting and things like that, their stance on it was, or is, has been, uh, no, you can't take anything. Okay. So there are people that have the mindset that I'm just going to do what I want to do based on how I interpret it. And it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. Well, it sounds pretty good and it's funny, but that's not always the best way to go. So, since this is a new hobby for me, I'm just now getting into this. I found some chanterelles at my home, and I was looking for some more places that I could look for chanterelles during the summer. So, what I did is I called my local. I started, first thing I did is I called the um, National Forest Office, okay, that handles the land that I usually deer hunt on. So I called them and they said, yes, sir, you can forage for mushrooms on national forest property. Then I called my local DNR office, the one that's close to me, okay, and I was told, absolutely not. If there's a management area sign on a tree, you cannot take anything out of there. A leaf, a twig, a rock, nothing. You cannot go get mushrooms on that land. And I said, well, the National Forest is telling me that I can, and it's all over social media. People have been doing it for years. Well, no, you can't do that. If there's a management area sign, you know, we manage it and you can't do it. So I wasn't really satisfied with that answer. And I called back the National Forest Office, and the lady told me, this was on a Friday, and the lady said, well, it'll probably be next week, but I'm going to have my boss call you back. Okay. So that was fine. Well, the same day, it was irritating me, so I decided I would just go to the next step with my DNR. Um, you know, so I called the regional office. Well, the regional office for me is all the way down in Florence, South Carolina, but they cover all these counties. Just about every county that I hunt in is covered by that office. So I called down there and told the lady that I had a law enforcement question. And so she put me through to someone. And I told the guy, I said, look, my local DNR office is telling me I cannot get mushrooms off of this land down here that is Forest Service land, but the National Forest Service people were telling me I can. And he said, does it have management area signs? And I said, yes, it does. And I said, but it's not state owned. And the paragraph says state owned properties, which would be, you know, WMAs that the state owns. It would be heritage preserves, things like that. And he said, well, there's a paragraph before that that supersedes it that says basically if we manage it or whatever, you can't do it. And he said, but I understand where the gray area is. And he said, I got my biologist looking through the rules, and I'm going to check into it. And he said, somebody from the National Forest told you could do that. And I said, yes, and they're supposed to call me back in the following week with a definite answer, you know, from higher up. So the weekend comes and goes, and then next Monday, the following Monday, I get a call from a lieutenant in the Florence office of the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, who was the guy that I had talked to before. And he said, sir, we've got an answer for you and you are good to go. He said, you're good to go. And I said, okay, I just want to make sure. And I said, so let me clarify it in my mind. If it is a management area, like a named management area that the state owns, that is not owned by the National Forest, I can't do it. And I named a couple of examples, and he said, that is correct. But I said, but if it is National Forest land, even though it has WMA signs, I can do it. And he said, that is our understanding of what we have been told. Less than an hour later, I get a call back from the National Forest. And the guy that called me back was over the Inner Reed District office, and he said, this is my name, this is my number. If you have any issues, call me. And he told me, he said, the Department of Natural Resources of the state does not manage our land. He said, they may put a dove field on there and manage the dove field, but he said, we manage the woodlands. And he said, and he pretty much played the trump card. You know, he pretty much said, we're over them. We're over the state. And he said, you're legal, don't worry about it. And he said, you'll probably get another call because we had left word for our ranger about this question. So I hung up with him, and just a very short time later, I did in fact get a call from a Forest Service ranger, and he told me that he had been collecting mushrooms for years, and he said that we were good to go, I was good to go, and if I had an issue, if anybody gave me any big deal about it, to be sure and call them back. They could even, you know, get a letter to show, you know, what you can legally do. So down here where I hunt, in a lot of these counties, Fairfield County, Chester County, Union County, Lawrence County, Newberry, a lot of these counties, it's national forest land. And, you know, people ride on horse trails, people do all sorts of things. But the important thing is, if you don't know, or if you're not sure, or you don't understand the gray area, ask somebody. And if you're not satisfied with the answer, ask somebody a little higher up, you know. If you've got what seems like a discrepancy between entities, bureaucratic or whatever, you know, get names, numbers, who told you this, and get information of who told you you couldn't. Now, when the South Carolina State DNR lieutenant called me back, he did tell me, you know, his name and per him and per his biologist, if I were to be stopped in the field and asked questions, who I could tell gave me the authority on the state side. However, the federal guys were quick to say, listen, you have any problem, you call us. You call us because we supersede all that. Okay? So that was good news for me. Even though I missed the good spring season for this little hobby, and even though I'm new at this, you know, I wanted to do it the right way. So the last thing I'll say about it is, sometimes just having a good tone and just asking the questions and not trying to be aggressive and fight. Sometimes you can get people to get you an answer. You kind of, you know, they'll work for you if you let them. You know, if you're patient. You know, and when I talked to all of them, I said, look, I don't have to have an answer today. I'm new at this, and I'm just trying to find out what I can and cannot do. So it worked out. It worked out good. And you've all seen videos on social media where people, you know, I know my rights. You can't tell me that. I know the law, and I know, you know, whatever. You know, that's fine if that's what you're doing for clickbait, and that's what you're doing for viewers. But for me, I have I have to answer to a higher standard. Let's put it that way. So I have to make sure that I try my best to abide by the rules. And I want to know the rules going in. I don't want to be surprised by anything. So, but anyway, it was cool. And now I need some rain to get me some more mushrooms up. Um, we're in a big heat dome, dry spell, heat wave, and so. But it doesn't matter. I came out this morning. It is almost the end of June, and I've been learning more of my trees and learning more of my habitat. If nothing else, I got to come down here and see all the woods that they've cut with the logging equipment, and so I'm looking for new areas to hunt animals and fungi. So, you know, just do the right thing. Don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to ask again, and don't be afraid to go up the chain if you're unsure about something. But be nice about it. Be nice about it, and you can get some good results.